All right, here we are. So I wanted to introduce, actually the name of this kind of video series is What's in My Mouth. So the question is, what's in my mouth and why is it in my mouth? And in this case, today, it's going to be Marietta Cellars Old Vine Red. Old Vine Red. So this is a delicious Red Zinfandel based blend that we came across in a tasting a few weeks ago. And we've been trying it out at the store and it's been really successful. I think it's delicious, simply delicious. I want to talk about the term old vine. So old vine, depending on where you are, may or may not mean anything legally, but there's an implication when we're working with old vines, when winemakers have the opportunity to work with fruit that are grown from old vines. The grapes tend to be more intense, they tend to have smaller berries, and the overall volume these vines produce tends to be lower. So if they're legitimately old vines, the wines are probably going to be a little bit more expensive if they're legitimately old vines because they can't make as much of it. This is a pretty reasonably priced wine, especially for its quality level, I think. I think part of the reason they manage that is because they use other grapes. So they're probably using old vine Zinfandel, red Zinfandel in California. And then they have, I think, 8 or 9 other grapes that they blend with this wine in order, maybe it's in order to meet demand, right? If they blend other grapes in, they're able to kind of stretch that old vine stock into a commercially relevant volume, which isn't an insult in any way. It just makes them relevant on a larger scale in this case. And I don't think they're compromising quality here because this is a quality wine. Blending is useful and it's done for a variety of reasons. We all know Bordeaux, right? Bordeaux is probably one of the most famous blends. An incredible number of Portuguese wines are blended often in the field, right? They may have different types of grapes growing side by side in a field in Portugal and in other places worldwide as well. So there's certainly no stigma in blending. It can be fun and really improve the quality of the wine. That sound was my dog, by the way, who just shook off on the floor. So there's now a plume of golden retriever fur on the floor, but that's a distraction. So this is the juice. All right. So it's a gorgeous red wine, deep color, very little rim variation, suggesting a thick-skinned grape and a youthful wine. This is a youthful wine. Interestingly, it's also a multi-vintage wine. So that's an interesting tradition as well, and it can be done by some extremely premier wines. So Champagne is almost invariably a multi-vintage wine unless it states a vintage, which is for their higher end, their tech cuvées. They in Champagne may state a vintage. Opus Overture is a really good example of a high-end multi-vintage wine, and they do it because they're able to blend different flavors of development into a newly released wine. And it can aid complexity, and it gives the cellar master more choices in their blend. So here we have the wine, and in terms of aromas, it's very inviting. This isn't necessarily a super serious wine. I'm not suggesting this is like a deep brooding, thought-provoking wine. However, it is delicious, and I'm thinking during the holidays this could go really well with a lot of the things we might be having on a holiday table. You have an awesome berry flavor, hint of vanilla, maybe something as wooden as cedar, but I don't think this is over oaked. It's very elegantly managed. And it's very bright and pretty, right? Fruit, it has some floral characteristic. So I talk a lot about the importance of structure. I think it's one of the most important factors for whether or not you or I or anyone is actually going to like a wine. And it's the structure of a wine and the progression of flavors is something that I look for when I'm choosing a wine and recommending a wine. In this case, I want a wine that has sufficient acidity. It needs to be tart. It should make you salivate a little bit, at least a little bit. The more it makes you salivate, up to a point, the better a wine often will be with food, right? For a lot of dishes, a brighter, crisper wine will simply be a better food pairing. This wine offers some tannins as well. So if you sip it and you swish it across the front of your mouth, you'll get a drying sensation on your gums mostly, sometimes on your tongue. And these are probably medium tannins. It's not super robust in that regard, but It means it can go well with bolder foods, with red meat and things like that. So this is it. This is the Marietta OVR multi-vintage red wine blend based on Red Zinfandel. This is a California wine. And yeah, tune in. I'm going to be talking about the Trig Point next. That's a gorgeous California Cabernet. It's from Alexandra Valley Diamond District.